Hi, I'm Bree, one of the co-founders of Frank Body.
Hi, I'm Jess, one of the co-founders of Frank Body.
Welcome to Selfish, a podcast that is all about putting yourself first and redefining the word selfish.
Over this content series, we're exploring a variety of topics with some amazing faces that you'll know, from self-awareness with Brooke Blurton to self-discovery with Jackie Gillies.
We're also talking about self-pleasure with Chantelle Otten and self-wealth with the incredible Victoria Devine.
Podcast episodes for Selfish drop weekly on Tuesdays, alongside a whole bunch of amazing tools, tips and tricks from our team that you can find across the Frank Body social channels.
Find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and let's get selfish together.
Hello, Bree.
Although I'm feeling a bit hot after that conversation.
It was. I got misty. We've just spent the last hour and a half talking with the wonderful Chantelle Otten. For those of you who don't know, Chantelle is a sexologist and psychologist and just all-round fantastic person. She was so wonderful to talk with about the idea of self-pleasure, and our conversation went on a really interesting tangent away from just stereotypical ideas of what self-pleasure is into this whole concept of self-identity and how we show up in the different relationships in our lives, which I loved.
What I loved about talking to Chantelle was how vulnerable and open she is, not just about her work as a sexologist, but also about her personal life. We talked about how, as a therapist, she tries to find these boundaries between when she switches off from work and how much she gives to others. And then we even talked about her ADHD diagnosis, which I thought was so interesting because, as we know, it's one of those things that in women is often misdiagnosed or not diagnosed, and these women have ADHD for years and they think there's something not quite right, but they don't get these diagnoses until later in life. So I found that really interesting to unpack.
I think so too. We have been about having open, transparent and frank conversations since day one. The last 10 years of Frank Body were built on that, and that's exactly what happens in today's episode with Chantelle. So enjoy.
This is Selfish, and today we're talking to Chantelle. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. I'm grateful to be talking about this today with both of you.
Oh, we're excited. I think to get started, we want to start with a bit of foreplay and just get a little bit of background on you and how you got into the whole world of sexology.
Yeah, that's a good question. I reflect on it a lot because you know how you think initially I got in because of this, and then you're like, oh, maybe subconsciously it was this. I mean, I am a therapist, so I think a lot. But I did psychology when I left school. I've always wanted to help people. I've been a caring position my whole life because my sister has a disability, and then I was a carer for my grandma, and it just feels super natural for me. But I knew I didn't want to be a generalized psychologist because I am also like a little bit impatient sometimes and a bit goal-oriented. And I think because my family is so open when we talk about sex, like we still are quite traditional, but my parents would always say sex is so important for a relationship and it's so important for you and your sense of self. And I just really liked it a lot. So I thought I'm going to explore and see who's talking about this in Melbourne. And I found a few people, but there was definitely a bit of an age bracket. And so as well, from a business perspective, I thought this is a gap in the market here. I know I'll be able to get a job. Everyone has sex, or everyone who doesn't have sex will want to come speak to someone like myself, if that's what they're looking for. And so I went on and studied my science and medicine degree. I lived in Holland studying it, and I've just had a lot of fun on the journey.
So good.
Yeah.
What we really want to talk to you about today is self-pleasure, and we're reflecting on this and that our version of what self-pleasure is probably quite binary. And so we wanted to get your opinion first and foremost on what self-pleasure means to you, or how would you define it?
Well, I think self-pleasure, people automatically think of masturbation. And maybe us as femmes, we think about toys as well. A lot of people think shame or secrecy. And then when they think of penis owners, they go, okay, jacking off, wanking, they've got different modalities or words attached to self-pleasure. But I really think we can expand the word and think about well, what brings us joy? What makes us feel connected to our body? You know, that might be even like, you know, when you wake up and if anyone here drinks coffee and you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited for my coffee.
Oh yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and it's like sinking in. That's like pure self-pleasure from my perspective. Or it might be getting out and smelling, you know, nature on a beautiful day, or when you've been cooped up inside the office. So I think self-pleasure is whatever you allow yourself to explore and give space to that's going to bring you joy and really fill your cup.
Are there particular moments in your day that aren't linked in any way to sexual activity that you would define as really pleasurable, or those like routines that you have?
I don't have any routines. I'm like chaotic. My routine would be ordering an Uber Eats coffee every morning.
That's great.
So when that arrives at my door, and usually it's because I've slept through an alarm or I'm like running a little bit late because I have problems with my sleep. So it just always like whacks me out. The other day I had to wake up for my own therapy appointment, and I'm very lucky. I've got a great assistant, and she's calling me, and I was like, why is she calling me so early? Like, I know what time I'm meant to wake up. I put my alarms on, and she's like, hey, you've got like therapy in 5 minutes. You haven't answered my text, because she reminds me that I've got it on. And I had looked at my alarms and I had put them on for 7:30 p.m. So that's just how my brain works.
Yep.
So I'll order a coffee usually when I'm running also quite late, and then I can see them walking to my door because my office is at the front of the house, and I go, oh, yay. Extra chocolate, cappuccino, I'm happy. That's self-pleasure for me. Or snuggling my dog in bed or kissing my partner. Like, that stuff is all pleasurable for me.
I know that you have lived between here and Holland. Would you describe there being a difference in terms of the culture and attitude towards sex in different countries?
In different countries, for sure. I think that here we're such a multicultural society, and I think with that comes you know, so many different backgrounds and different religions and different teachings around sex education. And you know, we've had such a push for adequate sex education, consent education in the past 2 years, thanks to some incredible people, and I think that, you know, we're pretty late to the game. However, I would say we're pretty liberated because we've also had such a lacking experience in the past. Whereas I definitely know, like in Holland, you learn about certain things like consent, etc., from quite a young age. So in primary school, like age 4, you learn, can I ask for a hug, or like yes and no, and, you know, maybe, and reading other people's body language. Doesn't necessarily all go smoothly, probably not, but you do learn those things a lot earlier, and there's more emphasis on that. I also think, you know, we learn a lot more overseas around the LGBTQIA plus community and different types of family dynamics and having communities raise you. So I definitely saw a difference. However, you know, when I've gone to Holland lately, I felt like things have maybe regressed a tiny bit. I don't know if it's the politics over there. I do know that there's some interesting things going on at the moment. I think we have a very different culture around dating here. And I guess equality in Australia is very different from my perspective. I do notice also, like on TikTok right now, that we're seeing a lot of like Aussie femmes going, hang on, you know, I worked hard and I'm looking for equality, but then they're also going, but then because I've started being so hyper independent, actually, like, if they're, you know, cis hetero, they're like, these guys are actually not showing up to the table in terms of dating or like being able to show you a good time. And, you know, just because I've stepped back doesn't mean that you also get to do less.
Yeah.
You know, have you noticed a little bit more conversation around like masculinity, femininity, all of that kind of stuff?
Definitely. I feel like I've had girlfriends saying that men almost seem afraid to make the plans.
Yes.
Because women have become a lot more confident and they'll put forward a time and a date. Be like, I want to meet here at this time. But then when they put that back on their male partners, they're finding they're not getting the same level of attention to detail or commitment.
Yeah, I think it's so multifaceted. I also think that for a lot of men that I've been talking to, they've been like, I'm scared to actually like ask someone else.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be seen as like a pervert or like creepy or like too forward. So there's definitely like this just weird kind of I think it's just like a flow or like kind of chaos going on out there at the moment, and I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, it is very interesting. So I think we do have a lot of differences over here in regards to sex, relationships, commitment, all of that kind of stuff.
Do you think that redefinition of masculinity and femininity is quite specific to heterosexual couples, or are you noticing amongst your community or your clients that anyone in any type of same-sex or non-binary relationship might be also noticing a shift in dynamics?
There's different, I guess, experiences, I think, when you're in the LGBTQIA plus community, because you'll be like, oh yeah, like I'll hear it a lot, like, oh yeah, this is like a typical lesbian relationship, or like, oh, you know, what I am seeing though from like across the board is more open relationships, more conversation around getting your needs met when you are, and that can be like monogamy with a bit of flexibility, or it can be like the total opposite spectrum of that. So I am noticing a real positive dialogue around, like, you know, creating a relationship that works for you and your partner or partners.
Yeah, breaking down the white picket fence cliches that have plagued us all and our parents and etc. What do you think is really leading to that shift in conversation? Are there key contributors in your opinion?
I think that we've had some prominent figures in the media talk about different styles of relationships, which is important. I think the rise of sex experts talking about, you know, sex and then all the different dynamics that come with that, and then reducing shame and stigma and judgment around these topics has been really pivotal in, I guess, exploring this. I mean, non-monogamy is not new. It's very, you know, like it's ancient, to be honest, but because there are more resources out there and more people are sharing their stories, and I think that allows for people to go, okay, like maybe this could be for me as well, and it's not as scary as I thought it was. It's better than cheating. You know, lots of people experience
100%.
cheating. That's very, very normal as well, and I'm not judgmental as with infidelity either, but I think people are going, okay, well, I do have some options here.
Yeah, it's not just A or B.
Yeah. Or if infidelity has happened, they can go, okay, well, let's reassess here. What do we need? Because obviously our needs aren't being met.
Yeah, you're right. Like maybe not such a black and white response to infidelity as there might have been, you know, 10 or even 30 years ago. If you go back far enough, it was just brush it under the carpet and don't say anything about it. And then it was
kick him to the curb.
Kick him to the
Kick
curb.
her to the curb.
And now it might be like, let's unpack why this has actually happened.
Yeah.
Do you think in general we're becoming a bit more of an open-minded and sexually liberated society?
I think when it comes to infidelity, Esther Perel's work has influenced that a lot.
Yeah.
Love that.
We love
She's
her.
amazing.
I think she's on our list of people one day we have to meet.
Oh, yeah, we heard her
God.
speak years ago on a boat and then just became obsessed
Yeah,
with
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
like her book, Mating in Captivity.
Yeah.
I loved it, read it back to front to cover. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I think we both bought our husbands the Where Should We Begin
Yes.
cards.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah.
hello, let's have a chat.
Hey, how are you feeling?
How are you doing?
I need to buy them, actually. Like,
They're
you
really
just
good.
reminded
Yeah.
me, because I think they only came out this year. So, yeah, interesting. No, I think like people like that are sparking conversation. And then we have like, I mean, the rise of podcasts and like, you know, also like just social media accounts. I think podcasting has changed a lot around this conversation for sure.
Yeah, like the shame is removed,
Yeah.
which is nice. Like,
I was going to say, like, you've touched on shame a couple of times. Why do you think there's still shame linked to self-pleasure or to pleasure in general?
Oh, I don't think people are talking about like self-pleasure that much, you know, like we do see sex toy sales like rising, and we see people talking about, you know, how they love this toy, but they don't actually talk about their self-pleasure experience that often, you know. And I definitely like, I'm obviously in a very sex positive bubble. People around me feel very comfortable. But I know a lot of my like really close friends who have never bought a sex toy, and they're just like, we don't know where to start, you know. And, you know, I have some people that my job first and foremost is to be very, very curious when people come to me, but also like remember that I don't know anything when someone's talking to me. So I look at my friends and I never go like, I wonder which one is having the best time, because I know that all of them will have something that they want to work on at some point. But sometimes I get surprised when I have friends that I think are like quite liberated on many, many fronts. And then they go, hey, like, do you have any spare sex toys? And I'm like, yeah, of course, like take this. So, and that's so surprising to me because they're able to talk about politics, they're able to talk about partying, music, lifestyle. They've, got different presentations. They're very liberated, but then they have never, like, there's obviously some stuff there that has blocked them from maybe exploring that avenue, or it hasn't been accessible to them in the past. So I think with self-pleasure, if we take like toys away from it, I also think that we don't talk about pleasure for ourselves in general because we're so in this rat race. Like I said to someone the other day, I just feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. Like every day I get up and I just jump in and I'm running until like 11 p.m. And then my brain's still running until, whenever I can conk out, trying to reset for a few hours. But that's just the way that our lives are at the moment. A lot of companies are hustling after COVID. A lot of people have no idea that they're allowed to pause and they don't have to work like themselves into the ground to be unhappy, unhealthy, disconnected from the people that they love. And so if we talk about people feeling disconnected from self-pleasure, a lot of people feel disconnected from themselves, period, right now. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be broken down.
Yeah, I think something you've spoken about before that really resonated with me is not so much focusing on the end destination and having a release or an orgasm, but just really slowing down with pleasure and it being more about what feels good and is this just a moment of connection? You don't have to necessarily get to an outcome.
Yeah, of course. Enjoying the journey is like the most important part. And I mean, what I just said ties into that. A lot of us aren't enjoying the journey right now in our lives. But then when it comes to self-pleasure, people go, okay, like I have time to have an orgasm right now. Or like, maybe if I like masturbated, I'll feel horny and then I'll be able to partake in like partnered activities. And then they kind of go into it and they're like, oh, I might have like 5-10 minutes. Like, and then they just put their vibrator on their clit and go for it, or they like wank and then they get it out of the way, and they're missing out on the arousal part of it. So the way that their body, their mind is reacting to stimulus, really noticing what's going on in their body when they are feeling stimulated. What's the sensory experience of what they're going through as well? What's their motivation for this? And I do think that there are many ways for us to slow down, but also for us to be connected to our sexual self-esteem as well. And so that's something that I talk about a lot in my clinic. And it's really interesting. I made a sexual self-esteem course years ago now, and it's so funny because I never promote it. I always forget. It's like my clinic. I always forget to promote it on my Instagram. But people consistently are buying it on a daily basis. Like they just find it in my links. And so many people want to know how to be connected to their sexual selves.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah. So we have self-esteem in general, right? So we're like, okay, like we got our nails done or our hair looks good, we've had enough sleep, our self-esteem is good because we're feeling good about that, or our self-esteem might be suffering because we're run down or we don't like the way that we look or feel, maybe we've been partying too hard, drinking too much, etc., and that might make us feel a little bit ick. Sexual self-esteem is like a similar thing. We go, how do we feel about our sexual self? Like the version of ourselves that's coming into intimate experiences, partnered experiences, because really you can be whoever you want in the bedroom, right? Like you just have to like switch it up. Some people, like this wild side can come out for so many different people, or this really timid side for someone who's super confident.
Yep. Yeah, so true.
And yeah, I think sexual self is really about how you are showing up within your erotic experiences, how connected you are to sexual stimuli. And that might mean, do we ever watch anything that makes us feel erotic or horny, or inspired? Do we listen to anything? Are we conscious of maybe exploring our body or dressing in a way that makes us feel amazing? Do we even know how to do that? Do we notice when we're putting like Frank body lotion on our skin, or when we're scrubbing ourselves, like what is the feeling there? Or are we just kind of like, ugh, like let's get it over and done with, like, get it out of the way?
Yeah, I feel like that's for a lot of us our general approach to life. And I think especially being a woman in this era, we're like one of the first generations to be doing it all, which sounds really fantastic, but I think
So
it just
annoying.
means like burnout, cortisol overload,
Oh my God.
hormonal imbalance,
Yeah.
and no libido for a lot of people that I know. And how can people take a step back and not sacrifice the things that they're wanting to achieve, but also try and find some kind of equilibrium that means they have any kind of desire for sexual activity?
It's like you have to make a really conscious effort. Yeah. And you have to figure out what that actually means for you. You can't just go into it blind. It's like going into, I don't know, like a pharmacy and buying every vitamin on the shelf because you're like, vitamins are healthy. Like, I should just be doing this. You actually need to take a tailored approach. We know that if we take vitamins that we don't need because we, have enough of that in our bloodstream, it's just going to come out anyway. So it's a waste of money. It's kind of like with our erotic selves, where is the barrier? If you think about like your desire, for example, it's like driving a car. There will be some things that put the accelerators on. So it might be like, I've had a day off, or I've got a fake tan, or I've had 8 hours sleep, or I have a child-free home, for a day or two. That might bring some acceleration to your desire. The car goes forward. And then you go, okay, I've got a deadline. Oh my God, I'm about to get my period. I thought I was going to have half a day off, but no, some dramas happened at work and now I'm like super stressed. So these are breaks. I feel like people have so many brakes on, more so than they have their accelerators on. So what I do with people is really think about what can we do to take your foot off the brake here. So we try and eliminate a few of them so that we can have more accelerators there. And then, I look at sexuality as a whole. So my job is to be a detective into people's sex lives. I have to look at like the biological aspects, what's happening in their body, their medications, etc. The psychological, are there any underlying phenomenon there? Is there medication as well because of that? Are they good, bad, or do we need to switch them up a little bit? And then we look at like sociocultural, what's happening in your community, your environment, your religion, your family life, etc. And then interpersonal, your relationships with someone else, yourself, and maybe like friends, family, etc.
How long on average would you typically be working with someone?
Depends.
Does it really vary?
Yeah.
Individual?
Depends. Like, I'm very good at my job. Some people I can like go quickly, like a few sessions. Some people will come in for one thing and then we figure out actually it's like nothing to do with why they're there. And some people I'll see for years because they like coming to me. Maybe we don't even talk about sex half the time. I am the kind of therapist because, I run a clinic. I have a big team there that does see a lot of people. And then I tend to now work with like different groups. So I work pro bono on one part of the spectrum. That's the main bulk of my work. And then the other end is working with like quite successful people that are, going through some challenges that are a little bit more intricate. And so I really like the balance of that. But I would say that my patients tend to be a little bit more long-term because they're a bit more complex. Yeah, but for some people quickly as well.
I like what you were saying before about the sex self-esteem and this idea that it is a skill that you can build. I think sometimes we think that sex and sexuality is something you should just know how to do and you should just know how to have an orgasm because it's human nature. Yeah. But I think for a lot of people, it's not as easy as just rubbing your clit or jumping up and down.
Yeah.
Do you think it is a skill that can be taught?
Yeah, well, the course says so. A lady came up to me actually on the weekend. She's like, hi, you don't know me. I did your course 3 years ago and my partner thinks I took a Viagra, like a female Viagra. And she's like, he has no idea who this version of me. And I was like, whoa, okay, because it's quite challenging, the course. But I do think that it is something that you can work on. And I think actually like from the start of your sexual life, you have to continuously be working on your sexuality, your understanding, your awareness around your body, your anatomy, your partner. And I think you have to just look at sex and your own sex life from a place of curiosity and don't think you know it all because it will change and your partner's preferences will change as well. But I think the problem is in a lot of long-term relationships, it's like the last thing that we talk about because we're like, oh, we kind of know how to do it. Like we know what that recipe is. It's going to make it work, right? So you just keep repeating the same recipe and then it can get a little bit
boring.
It's like eating spaghetti bolognese every time you go out. Yeah.
Do women still fake orgasms?
Yes.
Why do you think that's, to me, that blows my mind that in this day and age we're still doing that. Why do you think that is? Is it just the ingrained societal belief?
Depends what you're doing it for. Like for some people, maybe they could work on trying to achieve pleasure because orgasm's not the goal. But if they want to explore whether they can orgasm, great. Maybe they can orgasm through self-pleasure but not in partnered scenarios, and then you have to unpack that as a therapist. And then some people, I mean, faking an orgasm can be like an act of self-care or liberation where you're just like, hang on, I'm actually like not enjoying that, like this experience that much.
So this is how I can end it.
So this is how I can finish it. You know, people fake orgasms for so many different reasons, but we've had some very loud voices in the past be like, faking orgasms, the worst thing in the world. And I'm like, well, actually, like for some people it's going to get them out of a scenario that they don't particularly enjoy. But then I hope that maybe they walk away and go, what can I do differently here, or what didn't I enjoy, or okay, I've walked away, I'm not going to go back to that, that kind of thing. So different reasons. Yeah.
What are some practical steps someone can take to reevaluate their own sexual experience a bit more? Like what you touched on before. Like it's never just this thing that we wake up with. We don't have the knowledge innately. We have to continuously grow and learn like we do in every other aspect of our lives. What would you say is one thing someone could do today, whether it's regarding the self or partnered activity?
I think just like check, am I open to change? Like, am I open to exploring this first and foremost? Because like you should never feel like you should do something, right? If you feel like that, you have to go, why do I feel like that? If you're happy and content, like if you're having a sex life that involves no sex at all and you just like listening to erotic audio and that's your jam and that brings you pleasure, then go for it. You don't have to change if you don't want to. I don't think anyone needs to have sex if they don't want to. But if you want to and you want to have more pleasure and you want to have some excitement or want to desire it more, then I think open yourself up to being more curious about how you can do that. Listen to podcasts like this. You know, there's some great online courses. OMG Yes is a great website for those who struggle with orgasm or want to have, you know, a few different activities in partnered play as well. And then there's websites like beeducated.com, I think, and that has a lot of amazing online courses as well. So there's plenty of places to learn if reading's not your thing, or you can just look at like sex experts like myself and just look at their content and go, you know, do I like this person's narrative here? Do I like their vibe? Okay, can I lean into their content a little bit? And that will hopefully bring a little bit of inspiration. I always like people to just start watching or listening to, I guess, media that makes them feel a little bit more horny and like a little yeah
on
a little
that,
excited.
we were talking the other day about pornography and about how it's evolved, and I have 2 sons and I'm slightly terrified about the free pornography and how it depicts females and what pleasure is in general. Do you have any tips on how to find the right kind of pornography for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging, right? There are actually like quite a few porn websites that have sex education sections on them as well, right? Like I even think Pornhub has like an education hub as part of it. I haven't looked at it, but when I was at a conference at the start of the year, they were talking about there's huge debate in the sexology world, you know, do we use pornography as education? Because right now it's for entertainment. It's not meant to be for education. However, a lot of us learned about sex from pornography, myself included. Yeah. So there are great websites like Get Cheeks. They have porn on there that is consensual, it's ethical, but then they also have education pieces as well and tutorials on there. I think that having the conversation with your kids before they have access to free porn is probably the best way to go. And just be like, hey, just wanted to, you know, I think we should talk about porn. Have you heard of it before? You know, there's some great ways. some great websites that talk about how to have those conversations with your kids as well. Erica Lust has some good resources on that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Good luck.
I know, like, oh my God.
It's not my area of expertise, but I definitely like have to look into it soon because like a lot of my friends are having kids too and asking the same question.
I think it's really interesting that the spaces that we have where we should be having these conversations, at least for me, like in the home or in school, they didn't really take place. It was very top line, went to a Catholic school. So the sex education I got in school was rather limited and through the lens of Catholicism. Do you think that lack of conversation in an early age is what contributes to the potential relationship we have with our sexuality down the track?
Yeah, 100%. And I think whilst I would have loved for better sex education myself as well, I also went to a very strict Catholic school. I just kind of think, like, if you look back now, look at your teachers and you go, oh my God, some of them were just out of uni. Like,
they're like 22 years
they
old.
were like, you know, so young.
They're not equipped to have those conversations.
No, like we were so small, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But like, those teachers were so young and they weren't like sex education teachers. It just wasn't available back then. Even now, like people that we think should be able to talk about sex, like medical experts, psychologists, they're not trained in sex education. They're trained in medicine. They usually have like a 2-hour lecture on sexuality in those medical degrees. So I really like come and look at, I guess, professionals with a very empathetic view and just go, you know what, they were probably just trying their best back then. I didn't get any sex education at all. I think we did a project on STIs though, and I loved it. I did like a sealed section on gonorrhea, so like had all these like photos of gonorrhea in there. But I really just think we didn't have it, and that's why. You know, we have a lot of great resources now. That's why I wrote my book, actually. It was it's sex ed for adults. So people like us who didn't get sex education, so we could go, okay, we feel a little bit more confident talking to our kids about it. Yeah. Or the people we love about it.
Bree, something very exciting is happening this week. Your baby, the Everyday range, is launching into Coles stores nationally, and I could not be more excited.
For those who don't know about the Everyday range, it's 12 products that are all clean, full of actives, and really focused on personal care, products that you use every single day. What's going into Coles is our 4 incredible body washes. My favourite is the Clearing Body Wash, which is full of salicylic acid, and as I said before, beautiful clean ingredients that are going to give you the cleanest skin of your life. We have a very special bonus offer going into Coles, which is this Kick Swing Tag, and that gives you a full month of free access to the Kick Wellness app. So get into Coles and pop one of those body washes into your basket.
Now back to the podcast. Are you seeing a shift generationally between your clients that might be, you know, over 35 and those coming through that are a bit younger and accessing more information on social?
Not just yet.
No.
Not just yet.
Because they aren't coming to you yet because they're probably too young, or is it just that what is a seismic generational shift hasn't taken place yet?
I'm seeing a lot more referrals for people from medical experts, but I would say most of the people who come through my clinic are self-referred, so they're seeking out sexologists. But I think that's mainly because of the exposure that I have probably and the amount of information that I put out there for people to feel comfortable to be able to see someone like myself. Yeah. I wouldn't say that, is it coming from parents? Not so much just yet. They're all curious, but they aren't necessarily seeking the resources just yet.
So you are working on something behind the scenes that's targeted towards those of us experiencing or not experiencing our sexuality as part of our antenatal experience. Mm-hmm. I think Bree and I can probably both relate to this, not to put words in your mouth, babe, but
oh my God, no. My baby did kill my sex life.
The irony of children killing your sex life. I think it's a really interesting topic to unpack because I think unless you have a group of friends that are quite open-minded, you can feel really isolated, and I feel very lucky that I have close girlfriends that I can talk about this with. But you go through this act of having sex a lot of the time to procreate and have a child, and it becomes very scientific. There's no romance involved at all because it's all about timing, and then your hormones, you have this surge in hormones and this complete depletion of hormones and you feel like crap. Mm-hmm. Long story short, you don't want to have sex for a long time. In your experience, what are practical steps pre and postnatal that you can take to try and rebuild your libido?
I think like don't rush it first and foremost, because some people, like, I get those desperate emails like, hey, I'm 6 weeks postpartum, can I have sex now? My partner really wants it, da 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 da. And like, if you're feeling that amount of pressure, it's not going to be a healthy experience from my perspective. I think there will generally be one person in a relationship that is focused on like the family needs and all the care that goes there, and there will be one person that needs to bring the fun. And I think you have to have a chat as a couple and go, you're in charge of bringing the fun. And that's not just like about sex. That's like, we should go out on a date night, or we should go away for a weekend, or we should go out with our friends, or we should prioritize time together, or you should go out with the girls. Like, whatever it is that makes you feel like your individual self and not just like mom and dad or, you know, caregiver. I think that's super, super important, because we like forget who we are when we change roles sometimes. And I think those role changes are so massive. I think hormonally, like, go with ease. I think if you are struggling with things like postnatal depression, or, you know, you're struggling with your energy levels or sleep, then definitely consult with some healthcare practitioners. I mean, make sure that your blood tests are all okay, your hormones are going well, but also think about seeing like a naturopath, for example, to make sure that your body is kind of regulated, or getting acupuncture is also really good for that. Sleep is like the number one thing from my perspective. However, it's extremely difficult when you have a child to get a good amount of sleep. So just do what you can. And then I think break sex away from this penetrative orgasm focus and go, what is sex to me right now? Maybe it's like a head scratchy. Maybe it's like a foot massage right now. What can I do rather than what can't I do? And I think that can be really anything. Like, I think start kissing your partner again. Have like at least a 60-second kiss every day. So research, Gottman's got some really great work on this. And I think also make sure that you're getting some endorphins back in your body that are not just from touching your child, because you get all of that like dopamine and oxytocin from them, but you kind of get a little bit touched out as well at some points. So really just try and explore, okay, well, like, what's going to make me feel good? How does my skin feel? How do I feel within my body? And just try and get some body awareness come back first. Start masturbating. If you were masturbating beforehand, start masturbating again, because the more you have pleasure, the more you orgasm, the more you want it as well. And then if you feel comfortable doing that, then show your partner. Just say, actually, can we should we touch ourselves like together, or maybe we can make out for a bit, and I'm going to hold my vibrator, but I'd like you to hold my hand at the same time. Just pleasure yourself while they're part of that experience for you, and vice versa. You know, like if you're too exhausted to give a blowjob, just like say, you know, I want to be part of this. Like maybe we can do a hand job together, that kind of thing. Like build it up. Get yourself outside of the bedroom. Sometimes changing up location is really good. Start showering together naked. Get them in charge of like putting the like lotions and potions on your skin, and just ease into it. And then I think with time you have to start going, okay, like I know I have nothing in the tank right now, but I think we should just give this a crack and see how we can get back to our sexual selves.
I like that concept. I think what I would foresee as the dynamic for a lot of people in heterosexual relationships is that the woman has an idea of easing back into it, but once you start with men, they don't necessarily know where the end is. How do you think, whether it's a heterosexual relationship or not, you can clarify those boundaries before you begin, so you don't feel then like you're put in this position that you never wanted to get into in the first place?
Great question. I mean, start with the boundaries. What are your boundaries? You have to figure that out first, and then you can say to them, I want to start talking about being intimate again, but I'm really scared. Like, I'm really nervous. I don't feel that great. I'm fucking tired, and I'm not sure where to go with this. You know, what do you think? What are your motivations here? How do you feel about easing into this and making it a bit more of a slow journey. These are my boundaries. Actually, like if I start kissing you, I don't want you to then like proceed to touch me in a way that's going to make me feel under pressure. I just want to isolate the experience to just kissing, and I want to be able to lead the way here. And then if you need help, just do 1 or 2 sessions with a sexologist if that's within your reach, or explore online. I think Esther Perel has a really good like sex and parenting course. And then my antenatal course, when it's out, will talk about all of that, like some really practical good steps. And then they have, I've written so many conversation starters in these modules around what you can say word by word to your partner, worksheets, etc. So you can just feel like I'm taking over the progress rather than you having to lead the progress.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think for me, what I found was, having those conversations. And as you said, like being on completely different levels. I remember my husband, bless him, when I was really pregnant, he bought me a pearl G-string and pearl bra. And I was like, you expect me to wear these when I'm 7 months pregnant? And we had this really beautiful conversation where I was like, I did not feel like a sexual and did not feel attractive. I didn't feel like my body was my own.
Yeah.
And he was like, to me, you're still my wife and you're still really hot and really sexy. And I was like, it was an interesting conversation to have where I'm like, explain to him how I feel in my body.
That's really cute.
And right? Can you imagine me 7 months pregnant wearing a pearl G-string and pearl bra?
Just the uncomfortable pressure.
Oh my God.
But he meant so well.
He meant so well.
I really love that.
But I think having those conversations and just understanding that you're on completely different paths can be really hard to articulate. So I think what you said before, having those prompts is a really nice step. And I think as well, knowing that it does change and you do come back to that.
Exactly. And I think like what you're saying is you were able to be vulnerable with him. You were just like, hey, love this. But it's not going to happen. I love it, but this is how I'm feeling. And obviously the gift was him going, I don't know how to talk about this with you. So I'm going to do something that might bring you joy and might make you feel good. And then that was like okay, actually, like, I don't really feel that good, but I appreciate that you're trying to open up a conversation here in your own ways. So I really believe in being very direct and very vulnerable. However, not everyone has healthy conversation around these topics, or in general, people sometimes don't know how to have a healthy argument or like even like constructive feedback. These things can escalate, and that's what we don't want to see, especially when you're already feeling like you're under a lot of pressure. So I think that sounds like it was a really healthy scenario. For people who are nervous to talk about these things, is saying it in person going to be the best option for you? I would say for a lot of people who might potentially have challenging dynamics when it comes to their conversation, maybe because of them, maybe because of their partner, or the combination of the two of you or more, I would say my preferred way of going about it is writing a letter and saying like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. I don't know how to say it in person. So I've worked on this letter. I've been working on it for a couple of weeks now, and I've really articulated my feelings here. And that might mean saying something like, I love you so much and I appreciate our relationship. You're going to be, the best partner during this time for me, or like, I just don't know how to talk about this topic with you because it makes me feel a certain way. I would love if we could try this and this and this. I would like to know your answers to my questions around how you're feeling, what your expectations are, what you think would be appropriate. And can you answer paragraph by paragraph to me within the next 3 weeks or so? And then I'll read it, and then maybe we can talk about it, or we can keep going back and forth in this way until we feel like we can talk about it in person.
I really love that. The meeting someone where they are, I think is really a really big part of that concept, and not expecting someone to communicate in the way that you do. I want to shoot a look to someone off screen about how many conversations we've had around this with partner dynamics.
A lot of men don't know how to think on the spot, right? Like they need time to really digest this. And I think a lot of women, we speak very like emotionally sometimes, and we might be like, bah, and then actually what we're trying to say doesn't even come out a lot of the time. So then we walk away and we're like, fuck, we've created something that we didn't want to do. So that's why I'm really about mindful communication, and that's why I like writing letters.
Yeah. I'm a big
You love writing letters.
I do, because I realised that I would spend time thinking about a problem, and I would give myself 2 weeks or something to think about how I wanted to articulate it and then turn up in that moment. And then I give them 2 minutes to craft their response. I realised how unfair it was, and I needed to take a step back and give that person space to then craft their response, and then we would go back and forward, and the dialogue became much healthier and more productive rather than an argument.
That's beautiful.
It takes a while though. I think
It takes years to get to that place.
Yeah, and
Years.
I'm really a big fan of love languages, even though it's a bit cliche. I think there's, there's an element of understanding how the person you're with, whether it's a friend or a romantic relationship, likes to communicate and how they show their love. And I try and take that into those conversations or those dynamics as well.
That's great.
There you go, getting off track.
I wanted to ask you, because we're talking about selfishness or selflessness, as a therapist, do you find you have to give a lot to your clients, and how do you put in boundaries to make sure you're not giving too much of yourself to others?
So funny. It's very difficult.
There's no boundaries.
No. I mean, I see a therapist as well. So I have a therapist that I see every week. And I try different modalities of my own therapy so that I can be the best version of myself. But it is really, really hard. I have very strong boundaries with people that I don't know, because often I'll have people run up and be like, oh my God, I've got to ask you all these questions. And I'm like, then you should book a session at my clinic. I think that would be really appropriate. It'd be like, you guys talking about skincare or like coffee, beans. And you're just like,
all the time.
I don't want to talk about it. I think at the end of the day, like it is my job. And a really interesting thing is my friends actually don't ever ask me about sex.
Yeah, interesting.
They're just there. They're my friends. They want to have fun.
Yeah.
When I catch up with people that are more like, they're friends, but they're not like in my close circle. My circle's like really tight. And obviously we have a lot of things to talk about that isn't about my work. Then it flows naturally. But I am actually quite an introverted person. So I tend to hang out with people that talk a lot more than I do. And I just sit there and listen. Yeah, and they flow with me. My people are like really, they know my energy and they honor it. They know I'm extremely quirky. So they just let me go, do my thing. With people that are friends but like not good friends, they'll be like, tell me everything, like what's going on for you, what's happening at work. Oh, I don't actually have like news apps on my phone, so I don't know when, for example, an article comes out about me or one that I've participated in comes out. I don't see where my face is ever. And I think for a lot of people that I know, they're like, oh, you've been everywhere recently. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, I have no idea. And they're like, oh, you were talking about this here. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I write so many articles every week. I don't know where they go and how they present. So it is really interesting. I usually say, I don't want to talk about work with people. I'm like, I don't want to talk about me. I don't want to talk about work. Why don't you tell me about you? What's keeping you busy right now? What are you excited about right now? I really, for a while, I went into this place where I was really shut down and I just didn't want to talk to anyone. And then I thought, actually, I need to relearn the art of conversation so that I can twist things in a different direction. I was like, I remember calling my friends and being like, I don't know how to have a conversation with anyone anymore because all of it is so... I have to give so much energy to people and I'm not getting enough back right now. And I just feel like the exchange is off because I'm always riding the edge of burnout as well. So it is a work in progress. I would say I definitely don't have all the answers for that. I can dish out advice. Can I take it? It's a little bit of a different, like you can't always like get your needs met in that area. But my therapist is really good with that and at challenging me and like unpacking like, what do I need to do to make my life a little bit more enjoyable from an energetic perspective as well.
What led you to delete all the news apps on your phone?
I think that I knew what I wanted to pursue in terms of news. And so when there are like you can go on social media and you have an idea of what's going on. I only follow the Daily Oz. The Daily Oz is how I find out what's going on. I'm good friends with that team over there. And I found actually when their Instagram started, I knew what was happening in the world that was going to be of interest to me. Yep. Whereas I would go on my phone and they would have like the news app at the top. And every day I was just targeted with mum of 3 gets killed, you know, domestic violence here, da-da-da. And I already deal with people like that in my work every day, that I was just sad and drained. So I decided to delete all the apps, and also, like, I was getting targeted with, like, a lot of, like, shit.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of gossip kind of stuff that I'm not interested in at all. And so, yeah, from my perspective, I thought, okay, I'm going to be able to focus on the really important things right now, because I follow this Instagram that's going to tell me the important things I want to know. My partner is very involved with the news and really understands what's going on in the world. So he will be able to tell me as well and fill me in on the background to these things. But I like researching things. If something like sparks my interest, or I go, okay, this is happening right now, I will deep dive on that.
Yep. I like it as a concept, and Bree knows this about me. Like, I deleted social for a really similar reason. I think it should be sparking a big conversation about self-pleasure and how the things we do every day, or the world we curate for ourselves, either does or doesn't create enjoyable moments for us, whereas we just go to the extreme. And self-pleasure means masturbation, it means sexual activity, but for me it's how my world exists from the moment I wake up.
Yeah.
Are there other things that either of you do, Bree or Chantelle? You're on the interviewee panel now too. Like, that are part of your daily routine to make you feel better?
Yeah, I do. I listen in the morning. First thing I do when I wake up, like, it sounds, okay, maybe I do have a few routines, but when I wake up in the morning, I will listen to more of a nonfiction book around, like, literally glowing up from the inside, my brain, etc. Different ways on how to be like a good boss, or like podcasts. And that's the first start of my day. And then at the end of the day, I will listen to fiction so I can go to sleep with, like, a nice fantasy in my mind as well.
I like that.
Yeah.
Mine is all about the things. Like, I love little things like a silk pillowcase and really quality bedding. I like expensive tea. I like expensive hand wash. Like, the small things that I like to elevate. That's little pleasures for me.
Like a thing you're going to do every single day, so make it really good.
Yeah, that's what I'm about.
You like the sensory experience.
I am. I'm such a thing. Like, I love cashmere. I love silk.
Yeah.
I'm sure I like it in the bedroom as well.
Yeah.
It's like touch is like a thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned before that you have ADHD.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you got diagnosed, or how you found out you had ADHD?
Yeah, sure. I think that's part of, like, this kind of energy exchange that I'm talking about. When you have ADHD, your brain works so differently. Like, mine is not so much hyperactive, though at nighttime it starts ping-ponging a little bit more than I would like it to, which is why I don't sleep that often. I feel like, where is that energy from? Like, I wish I had that at 3 p.m.
Right, where were you at 2 p.m.?
Why is it happening now? It's 2:30. But if I look at my family, I think all of them have ADHD, except my mum. But we are all pretty high energy. There's 6 of us. And if I look at my dad's extended family as well, it's definitely there. But it was always kind of like my dad would be like, oh yeah, I think I have ADHD. Like, it was just kind of more of like a joke. It wasn't taken seriously, and it didn't need to be back then. Like, the conversations weren't really there. But I was always, like, really introverted as a child and always super distracted. At school, like, I was naturally really smart, but I didn't concentrate at all. I was like the troublemaker. I had the record for the most days off in primary school and high school ever of a student. And I just was always, like, loving learning from a practical experience. But I think that I don't know if people know much about, like, female ADHD. It presents very differently to male ADHD. And my school just thought I was not very intelligent. They told me I should leave school because I was never going to be able to finish it. Wow. And which is so funny, because I definitely know that I'm doing pretty well since I left school. But I stayed till year 12, and, you know, I did my bachelor and I did my master's. But the reason why I'm a good sexologist is because I knew I have to learn from a practical experience. This is way before my diagnosis. That was only 2 and a bit years ago. And I went and found an internship, and I worked for free for 2 years with a sexologist overseas. And we achieved a lot together. She really taught me everything I knew, and I'm so grateful for that experience, because now, as a practitioner, the amount of people that need placement, I go, oh my God, like, I give so much of myself to students, but it's fucking hard, you know, like having placement with people. So I appreciate what she gave me. It was incredible. And sometimes I feel guilty that I haven't given enough back, but that's another story. I'll unpack that with Francine on Thursday at 9 a.m.
See that, Francine.
Not to her. Yeah, but I need to give a bit more to her. But yeah, I think that like beyond that, I came back and like everything has just been so full steam ahead for me. Like I came back from overseas. I started my business, you know. I've always had different like ways of thinking about things. Everything has been around how I feel. My emotions have always been up and down. I've had depressive periods since forever. And fatigue has been a major problem for me over my whole lifespan. And then when it got to COVID, I was writing my book. And it was so hard. I would get up at 4 a.m. every day because I knew that during the nighttime when everyone was asleep, I could actually do my stuff. But I also I run a business and then I do consulting. So I had all this stuff that I needed to achieve. And then this book deadline, I had the book contract for a year. And then I got to 8 weeks out and I was like, I better write this book. So I wrote the book in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I just powered through. I just locked myself in my house. And I think essentially with that, I lost my mind. I had a mental breakdown. I did it. But then, it was really taxing on me. And I just couldn't understand, why I could never look at this book again. I couldn't read it properly anymore. My brain was just traumatized. And my partner was away playing tennis during COVID. He was overseas for months and months. And I think with that, you don't realize how unwell you are when you're having burnout. And you don't realize, I guess, how depressed you are because you're just everyone just you mask so well as a female, as someone with ADHD, you're used to masking when you have inconsistencies. But then a lot of I also I think when I'm stressed, I just lose a lot of weight. It's just how I have done things. I had an eating disorder when I was younger. And when you go to cope with something, you just end up in this space where you're controlling as much as you can. And usually that's just food. And I just lost all of this weight. And my partner came back and I remember him, he was we also moved house during this time. So I did that by myself. And I remember him coming in and so I was like, hello, so skinny. And then every door in the house was open. The remote control was in the washing machine. There was 12 pack of eggs in the freezer. I couldn't find my car keys for a month. It was just pure chaos. And I remember him being like, you need to go to the doctor. You're not going very well. And I was like, I'm fine. And then I was like, okay, no, I'm not well. Okay, fine, I'll go see a psychiatrist. So with that, I actually it's so funny because I would help get diagnoses from my patients and I went to the psychiatrist and I didn't say anything. I had an idea that I had ADHD, but I also knew I was depressed at that period. And she said, let's first figure out the depression, but I think you have a lot of ADHD tendencies. Usually when you're depressed, you have ADHD symptoms though. So you have to rule that out first. So therapy, medication, tiny bit of time off, not really, but just having an awareness and then being honest with the people around me first. And then once I was able to get some relief there, then we worked on the ADHD. But it's an ongoing process. I don't have the answers. I feel very lucky to be able to, I've worked really, really hard to be able to afford to get some help, of course. But that's not everyone's reality. And then, I think it's hard for the people around me. It definitely was hard for G, my manager, and I for periods because she had to manage my contracts and me not meeting deadlines. Then Katie as well. I have to try different medication. Makes you feel a certain way sometimes. So it's ongoing,
Why do you think, obviously you're a therapist and you said you had thoughts that you maybe had ADHD. Why do you think it took you to getting to burnout and your partner telling you to go get help to then take that step?
Well, I have seen therapists for years, so I think that I was already seeing therapists that if they weren't picking it up, that was really confusing to me because you don't really, you go to a therapist because you don't have a full grasp on what you're experiencing, right? So I had already suggested it at previous times before. Or I'd said, I think I might have bipolar, or I thought maybe it's my PMDD, like hormones. So I had suggested many things, but to get someone, the research just wasn't really there for female ADHD in the past.
It's still really undiagnosed, isn't it?
It's getting there. I think we have had such a huge surge of people go, and you actually, a lot of our creative friends, like a lot of our people that we know that run businesses, usually like very successful people, a lot of them have ADHD. So it's really, really interesting. It just, that information wasn't there just yet. And then I remember I got it, and probably a year later was when the surge happened. And I think that's because of how many people in COVID felt so bad that they needed help. And then they all started kind of, going to psychiatrists. This pattern came out, more research came out, and it became more well known. It's still getting there though.
Yeah, I see articles about it being one of the most misdiagnosed segments in the community, women over 30, and how finally they are being validated for everything that they've felt their entire lives and getting a diagnosis and getting help.
Well, it's so interesting. One of my friends is going through a lot of my friends have ADHD actually. When I look at them, you tend to gravitate towards people who are not neurotypical when you are neurodiverse. And one of my friends is going through it, and she's seeing a few different specialists at the moment. And she said, I think I might have ADHD. And her psychiatrist was like, oh, everyone thinks that they have ADHD, so don't worry about it. But she definitely has it. So it's a really interesting one, because you also see that people are not taking maybe this surge or this research so seriously. And I get that. People don't want to confront that maybe they failed the community in a certain way, or maybe they think it's trendy or something like that. But this is people's lives, It's really interesting.
I can completely see how that dynamic would happen, where because it's publicised more, people can identify with it more, so they go to their doctor and they somewhat self-diagnose, but it's because they're just going off their lived experience, and then they have that experience where they're dismissed by a medical professional, and this cycle just never fucking ends for women.
And a lot of people also want the medication that comes with ADHD.
I can
so then you have to, the registry, it's so hard to get that medication. And you have to call up a registry and request it and say how many milligrams. Everything is identifiable, so you cannot share your medication with people, because that is traceable to you. And I think that's really important. But I know that bottles of ADHD meds are going on the black market for $800 a bottle right now. It's so interesting. Yeah.
I know
because I have a lot of people asking me for mine.
Oh my God.
But they're not getting it.
They're not getting those.
I need it.
So I could chat to you all day, but I know we can't keep you for too much longer. So just a final question to ask you, which is, what does it mean to you to be selfish?
Oh my God. How do I interpret that? That's such a hard question. I think my perception of this is quite warped, to be honest, because I think I'm quite a giving person. But then I wish some people in my life were more selfish. I wish that they took time for themselves, because they just run themselves into the ground. I want them to be selfish and take care of themselves. So I actually think, in a way, not taking care of yourself is selfish, and not prioritizing yourself is a little bit selfish. I look at myself and I go, yeah, I'm running this rat race. Sometimes I'm working way too hard. Actually, I'm doing a disservice to myself, the people I love, the people I take care of, by not looking after myself. So I think it's selfish to not be selfish.
I love that answer, because you can't then show up for people in the best way possible. I think it does say a lot about your giving nature, that the fact that you didn't even think of selfishness being selfish, and you're like, for other people, how do I help them? Oh, sweetheart. That's lovely.
Yeah,
but I really like that concept, and that's a lot of what this content series is about, redefining selfishness and learning how to be selfish in the right ways and in productive ways, not just for yourself, but for the people around you.
Yeah.
So thanks for that answer.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for today, Chantelle. It was really lovely chatting with you. Seems like we're going to have a lot of fun links in the show notes.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
This episode of Selfish was recorded on Wurundjeri land. Always was, always would be Wurundjeri land.